Here's the exact blueprint that you can utilize to get your young athlete faster. Whether you're a coach or a parent, here's a simple checklist. We're gonna go over some parameters that you need to be doing, and then we'll also get into what a session looks like from your 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old all the way up to your 13, 14-year-old until they start getting a little bit more complexity in their training. Let's talk about big picture parameters first and foremost. When it comes to developing speed with youth athletes, I'm gonna make this extremely simple. You have to sprint, you have to jump, and you have to lift. That's it, right? And it doesn't matter if this is from the youth all the way up to the professional levels. Those are the 3 must-do things that you have to be able to do. And at the end of the day, you have to do them with intent, and you have to do them in a progressive fashion where week over week, we're either adding a little bit more volume, a little bit more distance, or we're adding a little bit more wrinkles or complexity or variation into our drills. From a parameter perspective, this is blanket. This is gonna be anywhere from 6 all the way up to say 12, 13 years old. You have to sprint a minimum of 2 times up to 4 times a week. Now, obviously I'm considering in the factor that they have sports to play, things like that. That's why I say a minimum dose is gonna be 2 times per week, maximum 4 times a week, depending on if they're playing sports. If they're in track, obviously you're gonna be running a little bit more. Number 2, you have to jump, right? This is gonna be kind of in unison or on a different day. They're gonna be jumping 2 to 3 times per week. And when I say jumping, this is gonna be your different levels of variations, whether we're focused on vertical jumping, horizontal jumping, or lateral or multi-directional. But non-negotiable, to be able to develop that force and those tendons and to really lay that foundation for them to be able to sprint with more force, we have to make sure that we're performing plyometrics or jump training 2 to 3 times per week. And then finally, especially with our youth athletes, you have to be performing some kind of strength training. It doesn't matter if it's body weight or you start introducing some resistance. I'm not saying you have to load up their back in a back squat. All I'm saying is that some level of resistance training, right, from body weight all the way into introducing maybe some dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, they have to be performing that 2 to 4 times a week. I can't stress this enough. One of the number 1 reasons why young athletes don't essentially look like, we have so many parents that come in here and say, oh, I need to work on my son or my daughter's mechanics and their sprint form. It's like, no, you have to get them stronger. And then as you get them stronger, the form will start to correct itself. If they're heavy footed, right, they don't have the strength in their feet, right, or the tendon stiffness in their feet to be able to display correct form, right? So they don't have the hip strength or hip flexor strength to be able to perform that correct fashion. So as we jump and as we lift, what we start to see is the sprint technique starts to correct itself. And then as they get older, if there's little things that we can brush up and to support them on mechanically, we do so. But they have to meet a standard or requirement when it comes to their strength. So let's get into what an actual training session is going to look like, right? And think of this as a roadmap or a blueprint every single time that we perform a sprint training session. Again, this is on top of practice, other things that they have going on. So starting off, we're gonna do some lower limb exercise. I just want you to think of these as pogo jumps where we focus on working from the ground up through our feet. These are gonna be our basic linear pogos, and you're gonna perform 1 to 3 different exercises or variations with them. You could do regular pogos, you could do pulsing pogos, you could do alternating pogos, you could do single leg pogos. But from a young age, we have to start building up that tendon stiffness, tendon strength, and just building up the overall foot and ankle complex as a whole, right? Working through the balls of the feet, being able to get them bounce on their feet. Number 2, we have to perform 1 to 2 speed plyometrics. Now, these are gonna come in the form of basic skips or basic hops. So 3 of the ones that I love that are absolute staple in our program for our youth speed is going to be the single leg hop, right? They're getting the entire leg involved and they're just hopping down, say 10, 15, 20 yards on a single leg. Very basic, but it's something that we have to do every single session. The next one that I absolutely love that we can introduce to our youth athletes is gonna be the power skip. Now think of this as just a regular skip, but we have 2 different variations. Number 1 is gonna be skip for height, where they're really focused on getting as high as they can, going down say 25 yards. And the second one is gonna be power skip for distance, where they're focused on being able to drive out as far as they possibly can on every single skip. You have to be able to perform. Now, obviously there's different progressions, different types, but these are linear speed plyometrics at a low level that we do from our youth all the way up to our professional level. Number 3, you should be performing 1 to 3 acceleration drills. Now, your acceleration drills are gonna be what we also consider drive phase. Think of these as 0 to about 10 to 15 yards. This is your start, okay? So there's many different drills that we hammer with our youth athletes. Things like ground starts, push-up starts, mountain climber starts, half kneeling starts, any different variations where they're starting off and essentially focusing on being able to drive out with intent as hard as they can for no more than, say, 10 yards, okay? And we can add a little bit of volume here because it's not as strenuous on the athlete. They're only going about 5 to 10 yards, right? So we can kind of start to add a little bit more variation to these drills, and we can also kind of beef up the volume, if you will, and they won't get too tired. Last but not least is gonna be the most important, and it's the most basic. It's sprinting with intent. You don't need to add a bunch of different fancy drills when it comes to, your sprint mechanics on top speed. You just have to get them sprinting for longer distances with intent. And what I mean by that is think of this from your 40 yards, 50 yards, all the way up to 100 yards, and being able to do it in a fashion where they're doing it at an all-out capacity. Start small, start at like a 40, maybe say 3 to 4 repetitions, but make sure the intent there, make sure that they're going as fast as they possibly can, and then start to slowly, week over week, instead of focusing on time, focus on trying to get them to add a little bit more. So if you start with 40, maybe say next week you go 4 reps as opposed to 3, or maybe you say you go 3 reps at 50 yards, right? So easy, simple little wrinkles that we can progress week over week so that they can start sprinting with intent for a longer distance. You add that now at a young age and you build that up over time, and they will continue to develop not only their ability from a technical standpoint, but also just to the rhythm, the timing of being able to sprint. Sprinting with intent, they're gonna be able to condition, build up the muscles that are associated with sprinting, and overall, you have to sprint, to get fast, to sprint fast, you have to sprint faster in your actual training. You have to do it at a 95 to 100% level of effort, right? So you gotta make sure that the effort's there and the intent is there and that they're doing it at a high level. I'm not saying 400s, jogging, things like that. I'm saying trying to get them in a little bit moderate distance where they're doing it at all-out capacity, and do that week over week many times over, and they will continue to get fast. I hope that helps. Look, if you're looking for how to organize all this in a set program, I have a full youth program down below you could check out. If not, hope this helps you out and you can plug in for your youth athlete. I'll talk to you guys next time.